service members of Reddit. What is your worst military wife story? I am a military spouse, but worked as a DoD employee with the Marines. Got a call that a military spouse was in the hospital. Her place on base housing had gotten broken into. The 9-month pregnant spouse was violated and beaten and taken by ambulance to the hospital. The assault caused a miscarriage. I was devastated and went to the hospital with several officers in the Marines chain of command. One of the nurses tending her looked me in the eye and said, "I am very interested in how this is going to play out." I was so confused. The 9-month pregnant debauchery and assault victim was given an ultrasound and blood work performed upon being admitted to the hospital. She hadn't been pregnant. She wasn't violated. Her due date was the next day and she's been faking the pregnancy the whole time. She beat herself up and carved herself up with a knife, then made up the violation story resulting in miscarriage as a way to cover up the 9 months of lying to her husband about being pregnant. I've never seen this level of crazy until 3 months later, when said Marine reunited with bat crap crazy girl even after all that. Standing gate guard in Washington, D.C. Officer's wife drives through the gate and presents her ID. I wave her through. She doesn't move, asking me if I forgot something. I said no, I didn't believe I did. She said I forgot to salute her, pointing to the blue sticker on her windshield. I leaned close to her windshield and saluted the sticker, wishing it a good afternoon. I got removed from that duty. Repeat after me. You are not your husband's rank. Saw a newer airman with no belt on. I asked, why don't you have a belt? He said he can't afford one, so I give him $5 and tell him to go get a belt. A few weeks later I see him at Ruby Tuesday cleaning tables. I ask around and apparently his wife was growing weed in base housing and he got kicked out of the military. He swore he didn't know what she was doing. I got accosted by a depender at a Home Depot parking lot because I parked in her space. I parked in a veteran spot at Home Depot. I am a veteran. I had my 2 toddlers with me, and the spot was next to a car stall. As I am pulling my kids out of the car, this lady walks up to me and starts asking me questions. Simple stuff, but nothing out of the ordinary, but I leave my kids in the car to be safe. She then starts asking about my veteran status, which was weird, but not bad. I told her I'm a SGT in the 123 Trans Brigade, not real part of the Natty Guard. Well, my husband's a lieutenant col, which means he's a higher rank. She said, well, if he's a commissioned officer, he's already a higher rank. I said, so you should give me your spot. I was dumbfounded. WTF. I told her to pound sand, to which she wanted my info, rank, name, etc. So I said, yeah, sure, and I'll make sure to give you the spot next time. No crap, 3 days later, I get a call from mine colleague. Hey SGT stuck in post. Do you know a LTCS face? To which, no, I don't. Okay, I got a LTC in my office looking for you. Said it's important. Alright, mine colleague puts me on speakerphone. Hey Sant, this is LTC's face. I wanted to apologize for my spouse's behavior the other day. I jokingly told her she could parade up and down the street ordering other soldiers to do things, and I had no idea she would take it literally. I'm sorry this happened and I hope we can put this behind us. I accepted his apology, because up to this point, no CO has ever apologized for their actions. Chillest LTC ever. Plot twist, this didn't end up where I thought. Got back from an 8-month deployment. Buddy's wife was 6 months pregnant. FedEx is amazing, really. I got restationed back in the States from Germany. I flew my German girlfriend over and we ended up getting married. She WNT back to Germany 4 days later and I never saw her again. Lol, whack. A friend of mine came home one day early from a year-long deployment. Wife was busy fricking another guy on the couch. In the bedroom was a baby she had never mentioned, fathered by yet a third guy. Not military related, but this reminds me of someone I worked with years ago. She had 2 kids, was married, living with a different guy, and was pregnant with a third guy's kid. She was 19 at the time. Oh, I'm gonna post some of my friend's highlights. She was the midwife on an Air Force base, delivered lots of babies. Colonel brought his 16-year-old daughter in because she was pregnant. Turns out the father was a new junior enlisted. He did not last long in the military. Dude's wife left him and moved in with her boyfriend off base while he was deployed. She got knocked up, Since they were still married, she was still going to the base for medical care. Their divorce wasn't final by her due date, so she still got to go on base and deliver. Her soon-to-be ex-husband, the military guy, had his buddies and security forces put a security flag on his soon-to-be ex-wife's boyfriend. The boyfriend couldn't be on base for the birth of his child, and, always the favorite, babies coming out with the wrong ethnic background of the father was at least a once-a-year thing. Colonel brought his 16-year-old daughter in because she was pregnant. Turns out the father was a new junior enlisted. He did not last long in the military. When my sister was in high school, she briefly dated the steward assigned to my dad, the captain of a Navy ship. He was a good guy, and I think what finally ended it for my sister was that it didn't irk my dad enough. The issue is that people forget the military is filled with 18-20-year-old boys, many of whom lacked relationship experience, and marry the first girl who gives them attention. It's true. Take a poorly educated kid away from their support network of friends and family at home and drop them thousands of miles away with a pride full of bootness and a toxic culture. Sprinkle it with lack of life experience and bam, you've got an E3 marrying a second-class stripper who ends up also buying a muscle car for 25%. Posting on behalf of my husband. Worst, they came back from a 15-month tour in Iraq. His platoon sergeant went home to find another man living in his house with his wife and kids. His kids, toddlers, were calling the guy daddy. When he walked in, his wife basically said, "Yay, I want a divorce. I'm with him now." Worst part was the platoon sergeant and new daddy kinda worked together, but was one of the few who stayed behind for clerical stuff while the rest deployed. Yes, I know this is absolutely against the rules. This was when crap was the Wild West and a DUI was an unofficial requirement for E6. ETA. I asked my husband what happened after this. He doesn't know what happened to Jody, aka deployment replacement daddy. The husband threatened to take the kids and kick her onto the street, which he definitely had grounds to do. Instead, she agreed to on-demand fricking and threesomes, including summoning a prostitute if he wanted one and helping him keep it on the DL. Posting on behalf of my husband had me really concerned for half a second. While delivering our fourth baby at a military hospital, we were talking to one of the nurses about infidelity and crazy things she had witnessed. She told us about a woman coming in with her husband for a C-section that was not scheduled. The woman insisted that she was scheduled for a C-section that day. They did an ultrasound and found that she was 3 months pregnant, not 9 months pregnant. She was willing to deliver a baby 6 months early so it would appear the conception lined up with her husband's mid-tour leave. Oh man, so many. One friend in the Corps, a first-term sergeant who hated every minute he was in uniform. He re-enlisted so she could go to school, left for deployment after re-enlistment, came back to a divorce and a drained bank account. Had another sergeant who met his wife while he and like 7 other guys were running a groupie on her. He decided he needed to marry her. So many crap stories there, but I mean he probably deserved them. Cause I mean wow. One evening while I was on staff duty, my then wife decided that I was cheating on her and not, in fact, at work. I was totally at work, nor had I ever cheated on her. So she texts me and says I'm going to go to the barracks and frick the first soldier I see. I was so checked out of the relationship at this point I was just waiting to get out to leave her, so I didn't bother responding. She showed up at the barracks and got turned away by CQ because she used her dependent id to try to check into the barracks and couldn't tell them who she was there to visit. Heard one not long ago about a lieutenant's wife who copped an attitude when informed that her husband did not qualify her for general officer only parking. A guy in my shop, Air Force, deployed to Iraq for 4.5 months. Before he left, he signed over general power of attorney to his wife. While he was gone, she started fricking another guy in our shop, then signed the divorce paperwork as his power of attorney and his right to see his kids, as well as draining his bank account. She went to live with the other guy in my shop and his friend off base. They were both arrested for check fraud when trying to pass off a check that was the roommates and the shopette on base. The guy she divorced eventually got full custody of the kids and the other guy in my shop got kicked out of the AF. There were other stories of cheating and all of that kind of crap. But this one takes the cake. She actively worked to ruin his life when all he did was love his kids and get deployed to Iraq. Don't give anyone general power of attorney, ever. I don't care how much you trust them or how much you think they love you. Don't do it. You can give them specialized power of attorney that only allows them to handle your affairs that you very specifically need them to handle. General powers are basically worthless nowadays. Our neighbors, 2, brought us some stories. 1. Unit deployed and she met a new guy. Used power of attorney to divorce the husband overseas and married the new guy so quick she was able to stay on base in the same house. First husband came home and ended up being in the same platoon as second husband who now lived in his house with his kids and all his belongings. 2. When we first moved in on base we had a neighbor that was super friendly. Wife told us she had cancer so her brother was staying with her to take care of her. We think nothing of it. A few months later they moved out to live off base. Normal thing, so no reason to be skeptical. Fast forward a few months and I'm shoveling the driveway and a guy from next door comes over to say hi. I say hi and welcome him as a new neighbor. He's not a new neighbor. He's had that house for a couple years. I got confused and asked about the woman who had moved out recently. He told me that woman was his wife. The brother was her lover. She didn't have cancer, and she spent all his money on Farmville then moved out with everything they owned. Freaking dependers and their Farmville. Dude in my platoon's wife falsely accused her ex-MP boyfriend of debauchery. Went as far as stabbing a mattress and swallowing condom to set him up. Dude spends weeks in jail before being cleared of all charges. When it comes to light, it was crazy lady vindictive bull. She amped up the crazy. She handed her friend her and my platoon mate's baby through a window at night while they watched a movie. Platoon mate went to check on the baby and it was missing. Prompted the first Amber Alert in Alaska history. She tried to pin it on the MP as some sort of act of vengeance. I can only imagine what the poor dude was thinking when the cops came to him with this. He was very quickly eliminated as subject and they figured out that the baby was safe rather quickly. Long story short, someone A. in my unit walked in on his wife cheating on him with someone else. B. from our unit. They separate. She moves in with B and leaves the unit. 8 months later, we return from a deployment, and A goes on one date with a girl. His ex-wife finds out and calls the 1STSGT. A gets charged with adultery and reduced in rank while B only got switched to a different unit. I have to. First, I was the witness to one of my soldiers' wedding. It was a typical Joe wedding in that it took place midday, at a Wings End Things. During the lucky bride's lunch break, the mother of the bride owned said Wings End Things but refused to attend the ceremony despite being at work that day. It was pretty amazing. Second, I was at officer candidate school with an army hot blonde. She was a deployment 9/10 and everybody hit on her. She was drowning in attention but it was all for naught because she was married to a green beret or something. Well, all that attention finally got to her and she started sleeping with the cadets. It got to the point of her and another married female getting nailed in a hotel room at the same time and they reportedly high-fived mid-coitus. About 3/4 of the way through the course she started to put on a little weight and it sure seemed like her belly was growing faster than the rest of her. About 4 weeks before graduation it came out that she was, in fact, pregnant with who the frick knows baby. Not long after graduation I heard that her marriage to Mr. SF did not survive the encounter. Hope this counts. My grandfather was stationed in Germany where he met my grandmother. They got married in Germany and she moved back to the States with him, where his family was absolutely not very happy about it. His mother actually offered to buy him a brand new car if she married a nice American woman instead. Obviously my grandma wasn't too happy about that and decided the best course of action was to have a second wedding in the US to prove she wasn't going anywhere. They were married 55 years and she's still living in the original family home. She really didn't go anywhere. My brother-in-law was on both sides of crappy cheating stories. He married a woman he chatted to online for a few weeks when he was 19. Then he had to go to Iraq. A month after he left she told him that he got her pregnant. He comes home after 6 months then she has a baby. The baby definitely is not his. Fast forward 10 years. He's married to an awesome chick we all like. She works a job and takes care of everything around the house. He cheats on her with her 18-year-old girl that worked at Sonic. She catches him and leaves for a weekend to go stay with her sister to figure out what to do. He puts all her stuff in cardboard boxes out under the carport and moves in the new girl. He really is a piece of crap. Air Force and Navy veteran here, and I'm a Marine wife. The worst thing I ever experienced was the death of a beautiful 5-month-old baby girl. The SGT and his wife were serious gamers. The wife also suffered from mental health issues. Both were weird and ignorant. The wife was tired of the baby crying and not sleeping. So, she propped a bottle on a pillow, used more pillows to cushion her, and left her in the master bedroom while she and the hubby gamed. The little girl suffocated. Neither parent checked on her for 12+ hours. They said they thought she was sleeping. They found her dead, left her for several more hours, and made a failed attempt to resuscitate her while they were on the phone with 911. They're so stupid. The police and EMS shared with me that rigor mortis had already set in and it looked as the baby had been dead for more than 24 hours. The parents went back to gaming because they wanted to finish their match or whatever. The mother showed zero remorse. However, she was completely fascinated with how popular she was becoming on social media. So much so, that she was super giddy with her local fame and said her kid dying was worth the fame and GoFundMe. The Marine was indifferent to the whole thing. This was one of my husband's Marines. We got the call to go to the family and bring them whatever they needed for temporary lodging. We had no idea what a crap show we'd be walking into. I was pretty naive and got maneuvered into a couple of crap situations. First, somehow ended up alone with colleague's wife. She starts telling raunchy stories and getting closer and closer to me. Tells me something like, "Nobody gives better BJs than me." It made sense in conversation, but also wasn't really necessary. My somewhat intoxicated response, "Okay, then, good night, I'll be leaving now." Second, was drinking with a different colleague. He got very intoxicated and, out of the blue, starting berating me for trying to sleep with his wife. I did not want to sleep with his wife, and was not trying to. Noped out of there. 2. Later that night, wife showed up at my apartment, ostensibly to apologize. Heard some other rumors, but was never sure what to believe. Obligatory not me, but my friend who I'll call Robert. Robert was bummy slobby looking guy who was always on the receiving end of jokes and pretty much only survived because he was a nice guy, so as lazy as he was, most airmen would cover for him. Being a genuinely nice guy goes a long ways in the military, so Robert had an unusually hot wife. Like completely surprised everyone that ever saw them together, and we all assumed that he was packing some real heat or that she wasn't a shallow butthole like the rest of us. So I'm not sure how this was arranged, but Robert had a best friend who I'll call Greg, and one day after a few beers Robert decides it would be real cool if Greg fricked his wife and let him watch. Greg is objectively a better looking guy BTW, and it happens. Greg fricks the wife while Robert watches, and this happens a few more times until one of the times, the wife finishes up with Greg and tells her husband, Robert, that she no longer wants to frick him, that she only wants to frick Greg. This made him very upset. And why do I know all of this? Because Robert came into our squadron and had a mental breakdown and told all of us. I was there trying to get some leave paperwork signed. He straight up told this entire story to all of our leadership and finished it off with a demand that Greg be punished. Greg obviously wasn't punished but was asked to stop, which I'm sure he didn't. In fact, no one was punished, and in classic military fashion, this story spread faster than his wife's legs for Greg. Gossip runs hard in the military. I knew a guy who got home from sea a day early back when there was no email or phones to call home, and let wives know they were in early. Found a different car in his driveway and someone else in his wife. He kicked his wife, naked, out on the front lawn and then proceeded to beat 7 levels of heck out of the guy. He spent 2 months in club ed for assault, but he said it was worth it. My best mate in the army married a girl he just met and then deployed. While he was gone, she kept begging him for money to buy everything that they needed to set up house when he got back. When his tour ended, the girl was genuinely pissed and wanted to know how soon he was deploying again. After some days of heated discussion, it turned out that she expected he would die in combat and told him that her family, and her boyfriend were counting on the money. He was an aircraft tech and never left the airport. He threw her out and told her they were getting divorced, and she offered up her sister as a replacement. Not a service member, but my uncle is and co. His first wife cheated on him with a colonel's wife. He found them in a very promising situation in his own house, so he did what he had to and he yeeted them naked out of the house for all the other people living in the military houses to see, including the colonel. Got a divorce, full custody of kids. But she says it's not cheating if it's with another woman. My old roommate when his girlfriend did this. I was in the officer club in Okinawa around 2012 or so. In walk at least 6 women in cute off shorts versions of flight suits that were bright orange. I was pretty confused until my Marine friend told me that meant their husbands were deployed and they were looking for a good time. Apparently it was an open secret. While I was in the Air Force, way back in 2003 or so, a guy's wife started hanging out in the dorms without her husband. Me and my buddy avoided her because we figured it wasn't going to turn out okay. Yeah, turns out she was just running through every guy in the dorms and even had fricked a guy in our shop. I mean that literally. He brought her into the shop and they had fricked on one of our workbenches. Again, back in the early 2000s. Guy I know had his wife attack him with an iron skillet. Both of them were active duty. He ended up choking her out because she was trying to kill him. Cops get called because its base housing and walls are paper thin. Wife admits she attacked him and he was just defending himself. First sergeant presses charges on the husband. Husband gets found guilty and kicked out of the AF and becomes a house husband for his wife who is still in the military. Wife never got charged with anything. You have been visited by the Wealth Rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.